I shared my umbrella with a little girl I found lost in the rain, feeling a strange, maternal pull I couldn't explain. When her frantic father arrived, he stared at me, his face white as a ghost. "Elara?" he whispered, but my name was Adeline, so why did I get a chill? Before we get into it, I'd love to know, what city are you watching from today? And for the last 5 years, my life has been a story written in pencil, ready to be erased at any moment. I woke up in a hospital in a city I did not know, with a face in the mirror I did not recognize, and a name that was not my own. The police report was brief and impersonal. An unidentified woman in her late 20s, the victim of a hit and run, suffering from a profound and total retrograde amnesia. I had no past, no family, no history. So I had built one. I chose a new name for myself, Adeline. I got a quiet, solitary job at a local library, a fitting profession for a woman who was a walking blank page. My life was a series of quiet, orderly, and deeply lonely routines. But at night, in my dreams, the ghosts of another life would come for me. They were not nightmares. They were fragments, beautiful and heartbreaking pieces of a puzzle I could not solve. I would dream of the feeling of a small, trusting hand in my own. I would dream of a man's deep, warm, and loving laugh. And I would dream of a song, a simple, childish lullaby about the pitter-patter of raindrops. I would wake up from these dreams with my face wet with tears I could not explain, with an ache in my heart for a life I could not remember. On this particular Tuesday, a day of a sudden and violent autumn rainstorm, those ghosts felt closer than ever. I was walking home from the library, my umbrella a flimsy, inadequate shield against the deluge. And it was through the curtain of rain that I saw her. She was a little girl, no older than 7, huddled under the small, useless awning of a closed-up shop. She was alone, and she was crying. Her small body shaking with a mixture of cold and a profound, heart-wrenching fear. My first instinct, the one born of my own solitary, self-protective life, was to keep walking. But I couldn't. I felt a pull towards her, a strange, powerful, and deeply maternal instinct that was alien and yet somehow profoundly familiar. I changed course and walked over, angling my umbrella to cover her small, shivering form. "Hey there," I said, my voice a soft, gentle thing. "Are you lost? It's okay. We'll find your mommy." She looked up at me, and her eyes, a brilliant and startling shade of green, were wide with a desperate, childish hope. I sat with her, this small, lost stranger, and I began to sing. I don't know why I did it. The song just came to me. A simple, quiet melody from the ghost world of my dreams. The pitter-patter of the rain is a song on the window pane. The little girl, whose name I learned was Everly, stopped crying. She just stared at me, her own eyes wide with a strange, new, and deeply unsettling look of recognition. She began to hum the melody along with me. I knelt on that wet, cold sidewalk, the rain plastering my hair to my face, and I listened as a small, 7-year-old stranger hummed the secret, forgotten melody of my own soul. The world, which had been a logical, if lonely place just moments before, now felt thin and strange and full of a terrifying, beautiful magic. "Where did you learn that song?" I asked, my voice a whisper, afraid that a sound too loud might shatter the fragile, impossible moment. The little girl, Everly, looked up at me, Her own green eyes, so startlingly and unnervingly familiar, full of a simple, childlike surprise. "My mommy sings it to me," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "She sings it every time it rains, to keep the sad feelings away." My own heart, a thing I had thought was a quiet, dormant muscle, began to pound a frantic, wild rhythm against my ribs. I had to find this woman, the mother, the woman who held the key to the ghost life that haunted my dreams. My mission was no longer just to help a lost child. It was now a desperate and deeply personal quest to find a piece of my own lost self. "Okay, Everly," I said, my voice now full of a new, strange urgency as I took her small, cold hand in my own. "Let's go and find your mommy." We began to walk, a strange two-person island of purpose in the bustling, indifferent river of the rain-soaked city. I asked her questions as we went, my own voice a careful, gentle probe into the mystery of her life. I asked her what her mommy looked like. "She looks like you," Everly said simply, and the words sent a fresh, new jolt of a strange electric shock through me. After what felt like an eternity of walking, of searching, of my own hope rising and falling with every unfamiliar face we passed, we finally saw him. He was a man, standing near the park entrance, his back to us, his entire body a tense, frantic silhouette of pure, parental terror as he scanned the crowd. "Daddy!" Everly screamed, her voice a high, clear bell of pure relief. She let go of my hand and ran, a small, beautiful missile of a child, towards him. He turned at the sound of her voice, and he saw her. He let out a sob, a sound of such profound and deeply felt relief that it was a thing of beauty, and he scooped her up into a massive, desperate hug, burying his face in her wet, curly hair. I stood back, a few feet away, a happy, but now deeply unsettled bystander. I had done my good deed. My part in this strange, surreal story was over. It was time for me to slip away, back to my quiet, lonely, and uncomplicated life. But as I turned to leave, the man looked up, his eyes full of a father's tearful, relieved joy, met mine. And then his expression changed. The joy did not just fade. It was violently and completely erased, replaced by a look of such profound and deeply personal and soul-shattering shock that it was as if he had just seen a ghost. His face went white. The color, the life, the very air itself seemed to drain out of him. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. "Thank you," he finally managed to say, his voice a choked, strangled whisper, "for finding her. I'm Cole. Adeline," I replied, my own voice a small, confused thing. He just shook his head, his eyes, which were the same brilliant, startling shade of green as his daughter's, never leaving my face. "No," he whispered, a look of a dawning, terrible, and impossible hope on his face. "That's not your name." I just stared at him, my own heart now a cold, dead weight in my chest. This man, this stranger, was looking at me as if he knew me, as if he had been looking for me his entire life. "Ilara?" he whispered, the name a ghost, a prayer, a question. My God, is it really you? They told me you were gone. They told me... His voice broke, a raw, ragged, and utterly heartbroken sound. "They told me you had died in the accident 5 years ago." I stood on that rainy city street, the world a dizzying, tilting blur of incomprehensible truths. The man in front of me, a man whose name was Cole, was not a stranger. He was my husband. And the little girl, Everly, who was now clinging to his leg, her own small face a picture of confusion, was not just a lost child. She was my daughter. And I, the quiet, solitary woman who called herself Adeline, the woman with no past, was a ghost, a wife and a mother named Alara, who was supposed to be dead. "I don't understand," I whispered, the words a raw, broken thing, my hand pressed to my own head as if I could physically hold the fractured pieces of my own mind together. An accident? Dead? No, I was a hit and run. I woke up in a hospital. I had no memory. No one knew who I was. The look of profound and deeply moving compassion on his face was a thing of beauty. "Let's go somewhere we can talk," he said, his voice a gentle, steady anchor in my storm. "Please." We ended up in a small, quiet, and blessedly empty coffee shop a block away, the three of us huddled together in a corner booth, and there, over the comforting warmth of a steaming mug of tea, he told me the story. Our story. He told me about the accident. It had been 5 years ago, almost to the day. We had been driving home from a weekend trip, a happy young family. A drunk driver had run a red light and had slammed into our car. He had woken up in the hospital with a broken arm and a concussion. Our daughter, Everly, who had been securely strapped into her car seat, had been miraculously unharmed, save for a few bruises. But I, he said, his voice breaking, had taken the brunt of the impact. He told me about the chaos of the emergency room that night. He told me about the police finally telling him that I had been brought in with them, that I had a severe head injury, but that in the confusion I had, in a state of post-traumatic delirium, simply wandered away. He then told me of the search, the desperate, frantic, and months-long search. The police, the private investigators, the missing person posters with my face, my real face, on them. But I had vanished, utterly and completely. After 2 long and agonizing years of a search that had yielded nothing, the police had made their final, heartbreaking conclusion. I had likely succumbed to my injuries alone in a city that had swallowed me whole. I had been declared legally dead. "I never gave up hope," he whispered, his own eyes now shining with 5 years of unshed tears. "In my heart, I couldn't believe you were gone. I looked for you in the face of every stranger, for 5 years. I then told him my own sad and empty story, of waking up in a hospital 300 miles away from here, a Jane Doe with a head injury and a mind that was a complete and total blank slate. I told him of the quiet, lonely years of building a new life from the ashes of one I could not remember. We sat there in that quiet coffee shop, and we pieced together the impossible, tragic puzzle of our lost years. In my concussed, amnesiac state, I must have gotten on a bus or a train, a ghost with no memory, and had ended up in another city, another life, a Jane Doe who had fallen through the cracks of a system that had failed to connect a missing person in one state to an unidentified one in another. He looked at me, at this woman who was his wife, but was also a complete stranger. Do you remember anything? Me? Everly? Our life?" I searched the blank, empty corridors of my own mind, and I found nothing. Just the familiar, frustrating, and heartbreaking void. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words a fresh, new kind of failure. "I don't." He just nodded, a look of profound sadness on his face. He had found me, but the woman he had lost was still, in a way, gone forever. He drove me back to my small, quiet apartment, the one that now felt like a temporary, borrowed space. He was going to take Everly home, to our home, and he promised he would call me in the morning. As I was about to get out of the car, he turned to me. "I know you don't remember me, Alara," he said, his voice a raw and beautiful whisper. "But I have never, for a single day, stopped loving you. I watched as he drove away, my own heart a shattered, chaotic ruin. I walked away from that coffee shop, my own life now a strange and deeply fractured thing. I was two people at once. I was Adeline, the quiet, solitary librarian, a woman who had built a life for herself from the ashes of a past she did not know. And I was Ilara, a ghost, a wife, a mother, a woman who was loved by a family she could not remember. I went back to my small, quiet apartment, a place that had once been my sanctuary, but now felt like a temporary, borrowed room, and I waited. The days that followed were a gentle and deeply patient courtship. Cole, my husband, understood. He did not push. He did not demand that I instantly become the woman I had once been. He gave me space. He would call me every evening and we would talk, two strangers getting to know each other for the first and second time. He would tell me stories of our life together. He would send me photographs on my phone, pictures of me, of Ilara, laughing on a beach, a picture of us on our wedding day, a picture of me asleep on a sofa, our newborn daughter, Everly, clutched to my chest. I would stare at these images for hours. I was looking at a stranger who had my own face, a woman who looked happy and loved and whole in a way that I, Adeline, had never been. After a week of these quiet, hesitant conversations, he asked the question I had both dreaded and longing for. Would you be willing to come and see the house? He asked, his voice a quiet, hopeful plea. Our home. It's exactly as you left it. I knew it was a step I had to take. I could not live in this strange, liminal space between two lives forever. He picked me up the next day. The drive to the house was a silent and deeply sacred journey. We pulled onto a quiet, tree-lined suburban street, and he stopped in front of a lovely blue two-story house with a large, welcoming porch. "This is it," he said softly. I walked up the stone pathway, my heart a frantic, wild drum in my chest. He opened the front door and let me step inside, alone. The house was not a strange place. It was, to my profound and deep and inexplicable shock, the most familiar place I had ever been. I knew, without knowing how I knew, that the third step on the staircase always creaked. I knew that the light switch for the living room was just to the left of the doorway. And the smell, it was the smell of my own dreams, of old books and vanilla and a faint floral scent that was, I now knew, the scent of my own forgotten life. I walked through the silent rooms, a ghost in my own past. My half-read book was still on the coffee table, a bookmark holding a place I had left 5 years ago. My favorite, worn-out gardening gloves were sitting by the back door. It was a perfect and heartbreaking time capsule. And then I saw her, my daughter, our daughter, Everly. She was standing in the doorway to the kitchen, a small, shy figure, clutching a well-loved teddy bear. She was not the same terrified little girl I had found in the rain. She was a child in her own home, and she was looking at me with a mixture of a deep childish longing and a profound and deeply understandable confusion. I knelt down so we were at the same level. "Hi, sweetie," I whispered. She took a small, hesitant step towards me, and then another, and then she was in my arms, her own small arms wrapped tightly around my neck, her face buried in my shoulder. I held her, this beautiful, perfect child who was mine, and I felt a surge of a love so profound, so absolute, so deeply and so painfully familiar that it felt like a part of my own soul, a part I had not even known was missing, was finally and completely slotting back into place. It was in her old bedroom, a room painted a soft, sunny yellow, that it finally happened. I was looking at the pictures on her wall, pictures of a smiling, happy baby, a baby that was her, a baby that was mine. and my hand drifted to a small wooden music box on her dresser, a box painted with small, delicate raindrops. I opened it, and it began to play a simple, quiet, and achingly familiar melody, the song from my dreams, the song I had sung to her in the rain. And with the music, a memory, a single, perfect, and brilliant memory returned. It was not a dream. It was real. I was in this very room 5 years ago. I was younger. I was sitting in the rocking chair in the corner, and I was holding my 2-year-old daughter, my Everly, in my arms, her small, sleepy head resting on my shoulder. It was raining outside, a soft, gentle pitter-patter on the window pane, and I was singing. I was singing her our song. The memory was a flash of a brilliant, painful, and unbelievably beautiful light in the long, dark, and empty night of my mind. It was the first real and undeniable piece of my old and forgotten life. I looked out the window and saw Cole, my husband, standing in the doorway, watching us, his own face a picture of a cautious and deeply profound hope. I was a stranger in this house. I was a ghost in this life. But as I held my daughter, and as the memory of our love, of our song settled in my heart, I knew with an absolute and total certainty that I was finally, truly, and completely home. The weeks and months that followed were not a fairy tale. They were not a magical, instantaneous return to a life I had forgotten. They were a slow, awkward, and deeply, deeply beautiful process of rebuilding. I did not move back into our old home immediately. It was too much, too soon. Instead, we began to date. My own husband and my own daughter began to court me. Cole would pick me up from my small, quiet apartment, the one that now felt like a temporary, borrowed space, and he would take me to all the places where our story had been written. We went to the small Italian restaurant where he had proposed. We went to the old movie theater where we had had our first date. He did not tell me what had happened in these places. He just let me be there to see if the ghosts of my own past would whisper to me. And sometimes they would. A flash of a memory, a feeling of déjà vu, a sudden, inexplicable wave of a familiar and deeply felt love. And Everly, my beautiful, resilient daughter, she became my guide. We would spend our weekends together, two strangers learning how to be a mother and a daughter. We would go to the park, to the library. She would tell me stories of her life, of her friends, of the mother she had lost and the one she was now so cautiously beginning to find again. There were difficult days when the vast, empty, and frustrating void of my own mind was a tangible, painful thing. Days when I would look at this beautiful family, my family, and I would feel like an imposter, a stranger playing the part of a wife and a mother. But Cole's patience and my daughter's simple, unconditional love was a constant, steady anchor in my storm. The story ends on a sunny Saturday afternoon, a year after that fateful, rainy day at the festival. I am no longer Adeline, the quiet librarian. I am Ilara, and I am finally and truly home. We are in the backyard of our house, the one with the lilac bush that smells of vanilla. We are having a picnic. A simple, perfect, and long overdue family picnic. My husband, Cole, is laughing, a deep, warm, and wonderful sound that is now the most familiar and most beloved music in the world. And our daughter, Everly, her face full of a joy so pure it is a thing of beauty, is running through the sprinklers on the lawn. My memory has not returned all at once. It is still a patchwork quilt, full of holes and missing pieces, but it is mine. I look at them, at my family, the family I had found by getting lost, And I think about the strange and beautiful and deeply, deeply improbable journey that brought me back to them. The woman I had been for 5 years, the quiet, lonely librarian named Adeline, she was not a fiction. She was not a mistake. She was a necessary chapter. She was a bridge that had, through a single, simple act of kindness to a lost little girl, led me finally and completely back home. I had not just been given my old life back, I had been given something far, far more precious. I had been given the rare and beautiful gift of getting to fall in love with it and with them all over again. An absolutely beautiful and moving story about a love so powerful it couldn't be erased by memory. What an incredible, emotional journey. Let us know what you think of this unbelievable story of a family reunited in the comments below. If you were touched by this story of a new beginning, please show your support by hitting that like button and be sure to subscribe for more powerful and heartwarming stories. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.